Commander Vexlar of the Thandorian Empire had seen many things in his 3 decades of military service, but nothing quite prepared him for the sight of the human artillery instructor. The creature stood barely 2 meters tall, its frame seemingly fragile compared to the towering Thandorians or the armored bulk of the Croxy delegates. Yet Colonel Sarah Martinez carried herself with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Welcome to Fort Bragg, cadets," Martinez announced to the assembly of 200 alien military officers. They had come from 17 different species, across the Galactic Coalition, all eager to understand why humanity had been granted provisional membership despite their laughably primitive technology. Cadet Zixthor, a young Thandorian with purple ceremonial markings still fresh on his carapace, chittered in amusement. "These humans still use chemical propellants," he whispered to his fellow cadets. "My ancestors abandoned such crude weapons 3,000 cycles ago." The comment rippled through the assembled aliens, producing various sounds of agreement. The Croxy delegates, encased in their environmental suits, emitted harmonious tones that their translators rendered as laughter. Even the usually stoic Velkari observers allowed their crystalline structures to flash in what passed for their species' equivalent of a smirk. Martinez heard every word. Her smile never wavered. "I understand many of you find our arsenal quaint," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Your plasma cannons can level a building. Your disruptor arrays can tear apart molecular bonds. Your photon lances can pierce starship hulls." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the crowd. "Impressive, truly." Vexlar noticed something in her tone, something that made his combat instincts tingle. "But let me ask you something," Martinez continued. "How many rounds can your plasma cannon fire before it needs to cool down? 30? 50? How long does your disruptor array need to recharge between volleys? What happens when your photon lance's power cells run dry in the middle of a sustained engagement?" The aliens shifted uncomfortably. These were known limitations, yes, but their weapons were so devastating that prolonged engagements were rare. "Let me introduce you to the M777 howitzer." Martinez gestured to the massive artillery piece behind her. "It looks primitive because it is primitive. It's essentially a sophisticated metal tube that uses controlled explosions to hurl a projectile. The basic principle hasn't changed in over 500 years. Zixthor couldn't contain himself. "Exactly. Primitive. It can fire 4 rounds per minute indefinitely for hours on end." Martinez interrupted. "It requires no exotic power source, no rare elements, no delicate calibration. If it breaks, any competent engineer can fix it with basic tools. It operates in any environment. Desert heat, Arctic cold, underwater in a vacuum. And its effective range is 30 kilometers. She let that sink in, but that's not what we're here to demonstrate today. Martinez smiled wider. "Today we're going to show you what happens when humans get serious about artillery." The demonstration began innocently enough. A single M777 fired a practice round at a target 15 kilometers downrange. The aliens watched with polite disinterest as the shell arced through the sky and impacted with a satisfying explosion. "Adequate," Vexlar noted diplomatically. Then Martinez gave a signal. The horizon erupted. 50 artillery pieces opened fire simultaneously. The sound was unlike anything the aliens had experienced, a rolling thunder that seemed to shake reality itself. But it wasn't the noise that froze them in place. It was what came next. The sky darkened. Hundreds of shells traced arcs across the heavens, their trajectories calculated with mathematical precision. For 5 full seconds, it looked like a meteor shower. Then the target zone, a stretch of desert measuring 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, simply ceased to exist. The barrage continued. 4 rounds per minute, per gun. 200 shells every 60 seconds. The target area became a roiling hellscape of fire, smoke, and pulverized earth. The ground shook. The air itself seemed to scream. But what truly paralyzed the alien observers was the realization that slowly crept over them. This could continue indefinitely. Vexlar's tactical computer attempted to calculate the total ordnance being delivered. The numbers were staggering. In just 5 minutes, the humans had unleashed more explosive force than most planetary assault fleets carried in their entire arsenal. And they showed no signs of slowing down. Zixthor's mandibles hung slack. His species' most powerful mobile weapons platform could fire 30 plasma bolts before needing a 2-hour cooldown. These humans had fired 1,000 shells and hadn't even paused. When the barrage finally ceased after 10 minutes, the silence was deafening. A mushroom cloud of dust and smoke rose from where the target zone had been. There was no crater. Craters implied there was still recognizable terrain. This was simply gone. Martinez turned to her stunned audience. Questions? A Croxy delegate finally found its voice. The ammunition expenditure, the logistics, how do you sustain this? We have approximately 40 million artillery shells in reserve. Martinez replied casually. We can manufacture 2 million more per month if needed. During our Second World War, we produced over 20 million shells in a single year. That was with 1940s technology. But why? Zixthor stammered. With energy weapons, you need only power and time to recharge. Time, Martinez interrupted. That's the key word. In battle, time is the one resource you can't replenish. When my artillery opens up, the enemy has seconds to find cover or die. Not minutes, seconds, and we can maintain that intensity for hours, days, or weeks if necessary. She walked among the aliens, and Vexillar noticed that none of them met her eyes. You mock our chemical propellants, our primitive kinetic weapons, Martinez continued. But we've spent 500 years perfecting the art of making things explode reliably, efficiently, and catastrophically. While you were developing elegant energy weapons with impressive capabilities and significant limitations, we were asking ourselves a simpler question. How can we throw more explosive metal at the enemy, faster and for longer? Vexillar understood now. Humanity hadn't been granted coalition membership despite their primitive technology. They'd been granted membership because of it, because while the rest of the galaxy had moved on to more sophisticated weapons, humans had turned warfare's most basic principle, throw rocks at enemy but harder, into an apocalyptic science. There's a human saying, Martinez concluded. If brute force isn't working, you're not using enough of it. She gestured to the smoking wasteland that had been a desert. We have enough. The alien cadets were no longer laughing. As they filed out in stunned silence, Vexillar overheard Colonel Martinez speaking to another human officer. Did we scare them enough? I think so, Colonel, though maybe we should have shown them the MLRS systems too. Next week? Martinez grinned. Let them process this first. No need to give them nightmares all at once. Vexillar shuddered. There was more? He made a mental note to recommend that his superiors never, under any circumstances, make enemies of humanity. The galaxy had enough problems without angering the species that had turned sustained devastation into an art form.